Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marcus Aurelius, and it is my pleasure to introduce you to the Tales of Enthador, a shared world experience for Dwarf Fortress version 0.42.06. So what is the Tales of Enthador? Well, if you're familiar with my previous Dwarf Fortress series, Anvil Quested, this series is going to be a little different. Anvil Quested was one large, long-standing fortress. I think it lasted over a decade in game and over 100 episodes, where we did pretty much everything it's possible to do for one fortress. We dug as deep as we could. This series, in contrast, is going to be a series of small challenge forts, all taking place in different biomes with different goals and different play styles. But it's all going to be tied together by existing in the same world, Enthador, the legendary planet. On top of that, I want to keep the same dwarven civilization, with the idea being that the history that we make in one fortress should hopefully appear engraved upon the walls of a fortress that we make in the future. So I'm going to put up a map of Enthador on the screen. This is a stylized map made by a GIMP plugin that takes the exported data from Dwarf Fortress and makes a pretty map out of it, basically. But as you can see, Enthador, the legendary planet, is quite a diverse and awesome landscape. We have 2 seas, a number of small mountain ranges, swamps, jungles, and even prairies. And these are just the big regions. We have a little bit of everything in Enthador, and I hope to have fortresses that span the width and breadth of it. When I asked people what they liked the most about my Anvil Quested series, the 2 things that were stated most often were my fortress designs, how they focused on defense, but also how I had some role-playing aspects that weren't necessarily practical, like my Hall of History where I engraved the history of the fortress on a pillar every year, and my artifact room. But also, people enjoyed how I focused on the history of the game, not just the history of the world and the civilizations, but also on the familial connections between my dwarves. And we're going to be doing a lot of that in the new series. In fact, because you can now leave fortresses without necessarily abandoning them, and they keep running on their own, it's quite possible that we'll see citizens from one of our fortresses migrate into one of our other fortresses, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that goes. Plus, it gets you started really well because they might have some really good skills. And another thing that's really cool about this new version of Dwarf Fortress, or I should say Dwarf Hack in this instance, is that there is a command called Export Legends, which allows you to do just like when you go into the game's Legends mode and export. However, it somehow manages to export a lot more data. So like in Anvil Quested, when we would look at the Legends mode, it would say, so-and-so became an unknown. And I'm like, well, what's an unknown? Like, what did they become? Well, now we'll know, because now that data that was missing originally is all there. So I'm really looking forward to the stories that we're going to be able to tell in this series. This episode is not going to be about any particular fortress, though. It's just to introduce us to the world and what's going on in it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about what I used to design the world. Now, I always design my new worlds with advanced parameters. Enthador is mostly a standard world. I didn't go too much off the reservation. I started with a basic medium region, but I tweaked it just a little bit, and I'll show you what I did. So, first off, the beginning stuff is all the same, basically. I did, however, reduce the minimum complete edge oceans to 0 and the minimum partial edge oceans to 1. The idea being that I wanted more land to play with. I didn't want a lot of islands that couldn't communicate with one another, and that's exactly what I got, so I'm happy about that. Then I also raised the minimum volcano number from 3 to 5. Didn't really do much good. I think 3 of those 5 volcanoes are down in the oceans or down in the ice caps, so we're not really going to be able to interact with them. With regards to mineral scarcity, the game starts you off with a normal base of 2,500, and the way it goes is the lower the number, the more frequent the minerals are. When you create a world using the game's built-in world creator, there's only 5 settings of minerals, and the number that I put here for mineral scarcity of 1,500 is somewhere between the game's setting for sparse and frequent. The idea being the minerals are not going to be almost impossible to find, but they are going to be substantially harder to find than they were in Anvil Quested. So hopefully that'll allow us to really play forts with an idea toward maximizing their strengths instead of having a fort that just happens to have everything. On top of that, just like in Anvil Quested, I am a big fan of wide open caverns. So I changed the cavern layer openness to a minimum of 80 to 100. It starts, I believe, 0 to 100. And I changed the cavern layer density from 0 to 100 to 0 to 20. Now what that's supposed to do is it's supposed to make the caverns look more like big, wide open, expansive caverns and less like little honeycomb passages all going up and down and around that are really confusing for me to see and navigate my dwarves through. So that's just kind of my own personal belief. I just like it to look like that, and that's why I'm doing it like that. Finally, I did give 15 layers of cavern between the surface and the first cavern. So we just have a lot of area to work with to build our fortress without necessarily bumping into the caverns. Other than that, I changed nothing. If you're interested in my overall settings, I am using the Lazy Noob Pack, and I am going with a population cap of 200 and a child cap of 5. I don't really like children in the fortress. And I have never experienced visitors before. I'm new to that, so I set the visitor cap at half of what it was originally. It was 100, I lowered it to 50. I just got a new computer with a brand new Intel chip, so hopefully we'll be able to do a lot before succumbing to FPS death, but we'll see. Of course I have invasions on. They let you set invasion caps now, so I left it at basic. The invasion soldier cap of 120, monster cap of 40. In Anvil Quested, we got a lot of invasions, but they weren't too elite. They were just regular goblins. We didn't see a lot of elite goblins. We didn't see them riding bats or anything. We did have one dwarven trader leading them at one point, but that was pretty much the only interesting thing the goblins brought with them. I'm allowing cave-ins, weather, artifacts, and temperature. We are not going to be entombing pets automatically. We may decide to do so on purpose if that's what we want to do. And one major change and cop-out that I do in my series is I just don't like aquifers. I feel like they're all over the place and they're ridiculously hard to get through, and they take away from the enjoyment for me. So I get rid of aquifers. If you want to see aquifers and if you want to see strategies for getting through them, I highly recommend you check out Daz Tactics videos. He loves aquifers, and in almost every one of his Dwarf Fortress series, he spends numerous episodes devoted to digging through an aquifer. So if that's what you enjoy doing, I highly recommend you go and check him out. One change I made is the graze coefficient. It used to be 100, I set it to 200. What that means, in essence, is that a grazing animal, like a cow or a horse or a llama, will only need half as much grazing space as typical. And I just find that some animals, they require an obscene amount of grazing space, and it makes certain playthroughs, like deciding to do a dwarven ranch or something, where you want to really have a lot of one animal type, it makes them really hard. So I lowered that a little bit, just so that's a possibility for roleplay reasons for something we might want to do in a future fortress. With regards to graphics, I generated the world map using Phoebus and Print Mode 2D, and I did that because that allows you to generate a world map that's made out of tiles and not ASCII. However, write in the comments what you would prefer, because I'm considering perhaps going with the text will be text mode, which what it is it combines a graphical tile set for the game, but also lets all the text be the original text of the game and not true type or changed text. But what it really adds as far as gameplay is it creates a 3D kind of look of the game where you can see down through multiple layers as long as there's empty space there. And some of you might want to see that, and so I'd be willing to try it. So let me know what you think. We might go with Phoebus like we did with Anvil Quested. I mean, we're going to go with Phoebus regardless, but we might go with 2D mode like Anvil Quested with true type fonts, or we could try out text will be text. Let me know. As far as utilities, we'll be using Armok Vision, we'll be using Dwarf Therapist, we'll be using ISO World, we'll be using the Legends Viewer, and Sound Sense. We may even use World Viewer, which is a competitor, I guess, to Legends Viewer. I've played around with it. In some ways it looks cool. I don't necessarily know which one's best, so we might try both of them, who knows. And with regards to DFHack, we're going to turn on the performance tweaks and the workflow plugin, but I'm not going to turn on any of the other plugins. And we're going to go with, game sound, because I like Sound Sense, and we're going to use it, but only for sound effects. The music in Sound Sense, some of it's really good, but some of it really isn't. And sometimes you'll go from something relatively soft and background sounding to something that's just loud and obnoxious. And I don't want to have to deal with that. So, and also there's copyright violation things I got to worry about. So I'm going to go with the game's internal sound, but I am going to use SoundSense for sound effects. And we're going to go in a 720p window, just because that, I think, is a good size. I always think when people do 1080p Dwarf Fortress that it just looks too small. There's little dwarves and little tiles, and it's really hard to see, so we're going to go with 720. And that's about that. We're going to autosave seasonally. So that's Enthador. Let's get out of here. So let's take a look now at the legends of Enthador as they currently exist before we start playing. Enthador, the legendary planet, has 31 current civilizations, and it's roughly equivalent between humans, goblins, dwarves, and elves. The humans are slightly larger and the elves are slightly smaller. The dwarves are actually pretty strong for a world. I've generated a lot of worlds where there are very few dwarves. So it's interesting that they managed to do so well in this world, possibly because of the 5 or 6 different mountain ranges that we have for them to live in. And I haven't decided yet which dwarven civilization I would like our dwarves to be from. But I am slightly leaning toward the Armors of Charm, because I like that name, and I don't really like any of these other names. But if you have an opinion, put it in the comments. I won't actually start doing a fortress for a little bit. There are a few kobolds, but they're very slim. There's 3 or 5 existing kobold civilizations, and 3 have died. I remember in AmboQuested we never really got any kobold thieves, so it'd be interesting for them to show up in this one. I hope that they do. Let's look at the map more generally. So as you can see here, let's just start from the top right here. This is the Persuasive Horns, one of our largest mountain ranges, and there are 3 dwarven civilizations that live in it. There's the Armors of Charm, the ones I'm considering being from, the Greater Daggers, and the Everlasting Tombs. And they're also surrounded by 2 or 3 elven civilizations here, the Grey Beak, the Jaws of Quietness, and the Pointy Prairie. And there's also a human civilization to the west, the Confederacy of Lessons, and it looks like there's also the Scoured Realm. And then down here in the middle we have the Circumstantial Confederacies. That's more Scoured Realm. And Confederacy of Lessons. So it looks like these guys are kind of sharing the space between each other. Over off to the west more, in this small little mountain range called the Untamed Beak, we have the Salves of Worth. And there's also a Necromancer Tower up there, and a volcano. Another Necromancer Tower. A lot of Necromancers around here. Up in the Forests of Shade, we have the Adorable Oaks and the Dutiful Ford, 2 elven civilizations. But we also have the Nightmare of Obscurity here in this river valley of goblins. And to the south here, we have the Union of Lobsters, which is a human civilization nowhere near the ocean, so I don't know where they're getting their lobsters from. So down in this little mountain range here, which is called the Murky Barb, which is appropriate because it's right next to an evil swamp wetland, we have the Factional Saber, a dwarven civilization, and it looks like another elven civilization, the Carmine Saffron, and a human civilization, more Union of Lobsters. As we go down into the jungles of speech, we have dense jungle and an elven civilization, the Carmine Saffron. This big mountain range here is known as the Fair Axe, and it is the largest mountain range in Enthador, but not the tallest, which is still the Persuasive Horns that has the 2 tallest peaks in the world. But then here we have the dwarven civilization of the Oaken Flags, and there's a little kobold civilization here, and we also have the elven civilization, the goblin civilization, the Mangy Spider, and the human civilization here in this Badland desert area called the Courageous Dunes of the Empires of Confederacy. Then there's also the Empire of Glens here, right in the middle. This mountain range in the middle of the map is known as the Vermilion Walls, and we have the lovely Blockade dwarven civilization. And it looks like they pretty much are alone in colonizing this mountain range. And there's also 2 kobold civilizations, Plubrilbis and Femis. Down further to the Good Ocean, here to the south, we have the Wilted Empires and more Empire of Confederacy. We have a goblin civilization here, the Dungeon of Urging, and they're right between the Good Ocean and the Untoward Seas, which is an evil ocean. Then there's some evil forest here and evil plains. Up here we have the Grey Beak, an elven civilization, and we're back to where we started. Oh, look at this little human civilization here, the Moist Empires. Moist and alone, guys. You're kind of off there on your own. So, that's Enthador, and that's the current civilizations that are contesting it. So again, I haven't fully decided which dwarven civilization I want to be, but I am just leaning towards the, up here, the, where are you guys? The Armors of Charm. Not necessarily because they're going to be close to where I want to start building my fortresses, but just because that's a decent name, I guess. And they're a pretty good dwarven civilization. Let's take a quick look here. So they have 6,700 figures, I guess, in their civilization, which is not the largest, but it's the second largest. The Greater Dagger is actually the largest. And it looks like here, I think this little tent means they have 55 different sites, which is the largest by one over the Greater Dagger. So we can take a look at them real quick. The Armors of Charm. So they are in this mountain range, the Persuasive Horns, but they also are expanding out into the hills and plains around it. So there's a lot of hillocks. They've had 2 female leaders from the year 1 to the year 99. It was Autumn post-empted, and from 99 to present, it is Melville Singleshot. And see now, I like the new, it tells you all the barons and baronesses and consorts and all the different nobles of the realm. And if we make nobles of the realm in our fortresses, they should show up here, which would be really cool. They worship a number of dwarf deities, but strangely enough, they also worship a fire imp deity named Zim, who is the deity of mountains and volcanoes, which makes sense why the dwarves would worship him. And also an impala deity, Kithin, the lavender wax of hawks, who is the deity of plants. So that's pretty interesting that they worship a llama, or sorry, an impala. Maybe we can raise impalas in our fortresses, who knows. So now we have all their different sites, and as you can see here, most of them still survive. This one, the Oaken Standard, was destroyed in 64 by the Forgotten Beast Falethi, Akradab, the Ruined Despair. But otherwise, they all, at the start of our playthrough, are doing pretty well. The current civilized population of them are 6,700 dwarves, as we mentioned, but they also have some humans, elves, and 1 goblin. How interesting. Number of horses, too. So these are dwarves that like to ride horses. Yeah, I think I'm going to be these guys. But if you don't think so, I guess put something in the comments. Let me know what you think. I haven't really decided yet, but I'm pretty sold on these guys. I like them. Let's take a quick look here. We have 27,399 historical figures. And I like to always take a check and see who is the figures with the most kills. So let's, hopefully this is sorting by notable kills. Let's see here. So Giken Talon Saviors, The Dangers of Leading, is a bronze colossus. And he has been around and he has killed, holy moly, 118 creatures, or at least notable creatures. That's pretty awesome. So the most dangerous creature in this world, and we are still in the Age of Myth, even though I took it to the year 150, is Giken Talon Saviors, the Bronze Colossus. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is Enthador. And we'll continue to use Legends mode throughout playing, but we are going to focus on the specific areas where our fortresses are located. But I want you to be a part of this. This isn't just my story. This, like Anvil Quested, is going to be our story. So what I'd like you to do is provide a name of a dwarf that you would like to have. Now we're going to do it a little different this time, and I'm going to ask you to help me because I know a number of people are going to put names they want in the comments. So please respond and say that's not how we're doing it this time, folks. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to create a Google survey, and I'll provide a link to it below. And with this, you can log on to that. You do have to have a Google account, but if you're able to comment on YouTube, you presumably already have a Google account. And the survey will just ask you who you are and what you want your dwarf's name to be. And that's that. And everybody only gets one. That's the one thing cool about the Google survey. It automates the process for me, and it gives everyone one name. And if we ever run out of people, I can restart it. But what's going to happen is I'm going to allow the names to continue through the multiple fortresses. So if we create one fortress and we don't use all the names, and then we move on to a second fortress, we'll start back with those names, and that's how it's going to work. So once again, if anybody in the comments mentions they want a name or this and that, please help me out and respond. But please still comment, however, in this video, because YouTube ranks and determines how it advertises videos based on the comments. So comment about what you think about Enthador, or comment about what type of challenge fort you'd like to see, or comment about how much you love me. I don't know, but just something so that the video gets a bit more traffic, okay? Like, dislike, comment. I would very much appreciate that. Also, though, in other series that I've done, people have gotten involved beyond just having a character named after them. In my Dominions 4 series, which just ended, people wrote music, people wrote stories, people wrote poems, and in previous Let's Plays of Dwarf Fortress, people would draw pictures. So any way in the world that you want to contribute to Enthador, you're totally welcome. So if it inspires you to do something, by all means, I'd love to see it, and so would the people that are watching, because again, this is not just my thing. This is not Marcus Aurelius telling a tale. This is all of us living an adventure together. And finally, before we end the episode, there is just one thing that I want to say, and that is these awesome new Dwarf Fortress title card frames that I'm using were designed by Dwarf Comic. And he is absolutely amazing. I just love the look of the gem and the frame and everything. He did a fantastic job. So if you could in the comments just say, thank you, Dwarf Comic, you're awesome, I'd really appreciate that. The way I'm going to tie everything together is that every fortress in this series is going to use that same frame, but the picture on the inside is going to be different in each fortress. That way you can differentiate the different series, but you can also tie them all together with that same frame. And I'm eventually going to put them all in the same playlist. I have no idea how long this is going to last, but my goal is that each individual fortress should not last that long. I don't want a 100-episode long fortress that takes a year to produce. Even if this series at some point reaches 100 episodes and reaches a year, I want it to be multiple fortresses. So just like Anvil Quested, we are not going to show everything. I'm not going to be recording every bed I put down, every door I build. I'm only going to show you initially my setup, my startup, my design of the fortress, how I'm going to proceed with it, and then I'll come back every time we get ambushed or invaded or something interesting happens, or I create something interesting and noteworthy. That way, unlike a lot of other Dwarf Fortress LPs, we aren't spending hours and hours just building statues, but we're actually witnessing cool things that are happening. And people seem to enjoy that in Anvil Quested, and I hope they will continue to do so. One final big change that I'm making from Anvil Quested is I'm not going to mess around at all with the Dwarven emotion system. Anvil Quested I wanted to last a long time, and I've seen historically how the emotions of the dwarves, when they break down and have tantrums and go berserk, it just ruins fortresses. They're called tantrum spirals, and I don't like them. However, they've completely revamped the emotional system, and it makes a lot more sense now. Dwarves become happy more slowly, and they become sad more slowly. So it's more organic, you have more control over it, but also, because these are going to be short challenge forts, I don't really mind if things go crazy and the dwarves revolt and kill each other. That's part of the fun, and then we'll just move on to the next challenge. So, okay, well, gosh, I'd like to thank you for watching this. Please let me know in the comments what you think about the idea of the series. If you have any potential ideas for fortress ideas or themes that we might want to pursue, and just what you think in general. Tell your friends as well if people are interested in Dwarf Fortress, if there's some forums out there you participate in, and you want to get people in on the ground floor of this, please spread the word. I'd appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter at @maureliuslp. I not only tweet my episodes, every episode that comes out, but also just random stuff. It's not life-altering, but you might want to follow me. It's fun, and I'd appreciate it. Other than that, I look forward to hearing what you have to say. So, thank you once again for watching. I look forward to bringing you the tales of Enthador, the legendary planet. Have a good one.